Okay, so I've said for a while I'm going to do these things, and finally I'm going to do them. I'm going to walk through the exercises that Martin has set us for our 2611 class. So you should have several things before you can do any of this. On screen here I've got Martin's cheat sheet for week 1, PP2611 lab session week 1. Today the focus will be on getting to know SPSS. Well, if we're going to get to know SPSS, you need to have the software installed on your machine, and if you haven't already, then connect.brunel.ac.uk is the place to get it. Once you've logged in, you'll click into My Apps, and the app that you will want, if you're on Windows, it will be IBM SPSS version 26, 64-bit, and if you're on a Mac, then it will be IBM SPSS for Mac OS. Don't download any of the other bits. Now, there is some faffing about involved here with licensing and the like, because life's like that. Try the tech support first. If that doesn't work, then come and see me during office hours with your computer, and we can figure out how to get the thing installed. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to have. But then, if we go back to Martin's cheat sheet, you will see we are going to download data, and we're using 2 data sets, the British Election Study and Varieties of Democracy. Now, he's put both of them on the Blackboard site. So let's have a look at the Blackboard site to see what he's given us. And yeah, actually, if I just go back to the home page of the... no, it's not letting me. You know you want to. Yeah. So there are several folders, but the data are in the data folder, and you're going to need to download them, and you're going to have to download them to somewhere where you can frequently access it going forward. So I've set myself up a folder here, which I'm calling C users OneDrive PP2611. That's the wrong folder. Lab exercises should be data, so that's where I've put Martin's files. I've got my data in here. Okay. And I've downloaded all 4 of those files. The 2 .sav files are the data themselves that are in an SPSS format, and the 2 PDF files are the code books, which, as I've mentioned in class, are really very useful to have. So we've got SAVs, we've got code books. Back to Martin's cheat sheet. Finding SPSS. Well, you type IBM SPSS statistics 26 in your start menu, and thus eventually it will load up. And as Martin mentions, there are 2 views, which are data view and variable view. But he also tells us something we should do before we do any session, and get into this habit. It's irritating, but there we are. It is edit options. Hello, computer. Yes. So it defaults to give variable names, to list variables by their label rather than their name, and it puts them in the format in which they are found in the file rather than an alphabetical format. It's usually preferable that we go with display names and alphabetical. So just get into the habit of doing that every time you open up SPSS, that we go to edit options, and on the general tab there we change variable lists to display names, and from file to alphabetical. Apply that. Yes. And okay. Right. Jolly good. That's given us some output telling us that it has done something, and that is what it has done. Good. Right. So we can then open the file BES 2019 w15.sav. Either do it through file open, or just go to the file that you have here and double click, and SAV will be associated with SPSS. And eventually so we have 2 views, the data view and the variable view. The variable view tells us the names of the variables, what type they are. So for instance, every variable has an ID, and that is a numeric one. 8 characters wide, its label is ID, and these are the other values associated with it. It's a scale and input and the like that. Others will not be numeric, but they will instead be something like a date, or they can be alphanumeric as well, and other such formats. In the data view, we see the data themselves. So here we see the populated ID variable, and then the wave in which it was carried out, and so forth. Now, back to Martin's sheet. So in Martin's cheat sheet, he tells us to look for a variable called gore, and there it is on row number 31. We might not know what gore is because the name isn't exactly intuitive. Well, the label tells us what it is, and it is area of UK respondent lives in, which can take on the values of 1 for northeast, 2 for northwest, 3 for Yorkshire and Humber, and so forth. Cancel that for the moment. The other way in which we could have found out where gore came from is by looking at not the cheat sheet, but the codebook. So if we fire up the codebook, BS wave 15 duck, and eventually that will load up as well. Close that bit. And then if we search for gore, tall and tan and long and lovely, the girl from Ipanema. Come on. So if we search for gore, eventually it will find that there we have it. Gore, close that for a moment, is a single choice of which area of the UK do you live in, with those values that were mentioned in the SPSS values folder. Okay, back to Martin's cheat sheet, where he tells us to look now at the data view, and says that looks very different, which it does because each row is an observation, and that means a person in this case, or as a respondent as we normally call them, and each column is a variable. So this way is variables, this way is respondents. One of those, if we look at row number 2, is general election vote. Let's have a look. General election vote is here, takes on the value 2. Now, how do we know which way they voted if it's a number 2? What does that mean? Well, again, there's 2 ways we can find out. We can go through the codebook, or we can have a look at general election vote in the variable view. General election vote, if I make that a little bit wider here, vote, yep. And we know that it's the general election, so 2 means that they voted for Labour, and so there's the other parties that were included. Okay, so also in Martin's cheat sheet, he has told us that we will get this extra window that SPSS gives us, which is our data output window. This is, if you imagine it as being a bit like a printer, that every time you ask it to do a command, be that make a graph, show you some crosstabs or something like that, it prints them out onto this output window and then leaves that. It won't change them. Okay, so no matter what you do in SPSS subsequently, it will not change the output that's been done already, but it will add bits to the end of it, like it's on an infinite piece of paper. So it's a good habit to get into saving this, because you might use it, well, you will use it for your assignments, and we will save as. First of all, I would suggest that you save it into, not in your data folder, but in your 2611 folder. We'll make a new folder called output. Copy that with Control C, go back over here, delete that, Control V, another backslash, and we will call it output 1, and not SPV, but change it to HTM, a HTML file, because then we can load it up in a web browser and it'll look all pretty and be very easy to deal with. So HTM, and it's just deleted the folder. All right, go back and put that in again. Thank you, SPSS. Output like that, save, and that should give us an output file which will by default open up in your browser, which looks like that. So it's giving us just the commands that it's done so far. Not much to look at the moment, but it will be later on. Back to Martin's cheat sheet, and we're also going to be using another data set which is called VDEM, the Varieties of Democracy project. So let's go to our data folder and open up the vdem.sav file. So what we see this time is it's a data set of countries over a period of time, as Martin tells us, so that each observation is a country year. Okay, so each one of these items on the data view is a country year. The first observation being Mexico, and the year is 1789, which rather unhelpfully is displaying with 2 decimal points, which is entirely meaningless. So to understand what that what are in that data set, you of course will go to the codebook, and the codebook there tells us all about the VDEM data. Finally, in Martin's cheat sheet, he tells us to look for 3 variables in each of the data sets. I'll show you one in British election study to see how we do this. Respondents' education. We could either go through the codebook, or we can go through the variable view here. If I search, do Control F for find education, not that one, that one, yeah, education, which can take on a number of values, specifically no formal qualification, youth training, recognized trade apprenticeship, and so on, telling us the level of education that that respondent has achieved. Okay, I'll let you find the other ones, and I will see you in the next session. Thank you.